Hey folks, this is the update or the recap for this legislative week in Washington, D.C. And no matter what else we're doing throughout the week, starting early in the morning, going late in the night, is figuring out the spending and the budget. We want to make sure that we have money for the border. We want to make sure that we permanently preserve the tax cuts that you already have, but we also have to rein in federal spending. And of course, those are discussions and disagreements. We think we might be at a good place here. I'm not on the budget committee, but it is meeting today to roll out the budget that I've been working on and others been working on diligently to get to a point of passage. So throughout all this that I'm going to talk about, that's been going on too. So it takes a lot of time. Some bill introductions this week from our office: the No Propaganda Act. We just don't think we ought to be funding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting because it's just propaganda at this point, and it's admittedly so by them. So if you ever watch it, they already have outside sponsorship. We're $1 trillion every 100 days here, further in debt. We just don't have money for propaganda, so that's something that just doesn't obviously need our money. The Protecting Taxpayers' Wallet Act. If you work as a union employee in the federal government, you can actually use the time, whether you're a nurse or a doctor or an engineer or something, instead of doing doctor work or nurse or engineer work, you can use that time to do lobbying work for the union. And we just feel like that ought to be reimbursed to the federal taxpayer. No problem with you doing it, but if you're doing it on official time, it ought to be reimbursed. The Drill Now Act. We live in Pennsylvania, and the Delaware River Basin Commission has decided it's an interstate compact, an agreement between states, but it's full of unelected bureaucrats that make decisions on your behalf that you have no oversight over and no accountability for. And doesn't matter who you vote for or don't vote for, it just continues. And they put a moratorium on fracking in their portion of Pennsylvania, which denies the property rights of the people in Pennsylvania, the mineral rights that they have. And so we want to be able to say, as elected officials, we're in charge here. We'll do the work of the people, and you cannot take their property rights away from them. So we introduced that today. And then finally, the Stopping Political Discrimination During Disasters Assistance Act. As you know, FEMA was using people's political viewpoints to determine whether they should get disaster assistance or not when they went through places like North Carolina. It's wholly inappropriate and unacceptable. And so your political viewpoints, whether they're left or right, you're a taxpayer. If you're affected by disasters and FEMA's coming in, that shouldn't be a reason to not get assistance. And so that's what the bill does, and I'm happy to join with Senator Langford in that bill and moving that forward. So we introduced that. We also had a hearing on USAID where I highlighted some of the misspending by USAID. We spent over $2 trillion in Afghanistan, lost or wounded 2,500 souls of Americans, and yet we're still paying millions, hundreds of millions of dollars annually to the Taliban. And I pointed out how the Taliban uses that instead of going for causes for women, which, by the way, women are not allowed to be heard speaking in Afghanistan, yet we're promoting causes that allegedly pay for women's education and the empowerment of women. As you know, I'm all for the empowerment of women, but unfortunately, all the evidence that we have shows that this money is going to empower the terrorists. And so I just brought that up in the hearing as one of the many places that USAID is squandering your tax dollars. We had a transportation and infrastructure hearing on the Clean Water Act and permitting and project delivery, particularly Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. And I use my time to point out how Section 401 is used to stop projects. Projects, for instance, a pipeline through New York or New Jersey that would get Pennsylvania natural gas to New England. And instead of running that pipeline, because they use Section 401 to stop the pipeline, we instead then, as people in New England, Americans in New England, pay exorbitant prices for natural gas because we can't get it from America because we have to buy it from Russia. on foreign ships, by the way, but that's another story. So anyhow, use that hearing to point out those inconsistencies and abuses of Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. And finally, we've passed two pieces of legislation this week. The Midnight Rules Relief Act. When an administration, the Biden administration just left, and there's a flurry of executive rules that go through the agencies, whether it's OSHA, whether it's the EPA, they push a bunch of rules through right at the last minute. And we'd like to, if we're going to rescind some of those rules that were rushed through at the last minute, we want to package them in one package so we don't have to vote multiple times on those things. We're going to put them in one package and vote whether we're going to keep them or not. And so that's what that offers. I voted for that. And then the Agent Raul Gonzalez Officer Safety Act, which allows people that are here illegally to be deported from using a motor vehicle to run from the police. So I voted in favor of that as well. If you're here illegally committing crimes, including running from the police, you should be deported for that, in my opinion. So I voted in favor of that. That's the update for the week. We'll see what the budget, how that goes as the week continues or as the day continues here. And then we'll see what transpires next week. Until then, I hope you're healthy and safe and prosperous. Thanks a lot. So long.